Hey you, my name is TomSka's Ridgewell, and welcome back to TomSka's Top 10, the only show on the internet where I'm not complaining, which is rare for me. Today I'm going to be talking about the comics that I like, and this is going to include comic strips, graphic novels, and manga, because I like these things but probably don't know them well enough individually to make a comprehensive list of recommendations, so I'm just going to fuse them all into one video under the umbrella of comics. This is actually a video that I strongly contemplated not making because a couple of the comics in this list are quite dark and not necessarily reflective of the kind of work I make or want to be associated with, and I wasn't sure if I was comfortable recommending them to a younger or more impressionable audience, so I flirted with the idea of either like airbrushing this video and just removing the darker elements or not making it at all, but I've decided to just put everything in there with a disclaimer on the particular things that I think may not be appropriate for younger or more impressionable people, and you can just do with this list of things that I like what you will. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 10 is The Far Side from Gary Larson. This is actually the first comic that I ever read when I was just 10 years old. I remember finding it in my school library when I was either hiding from bullies or more likely just had no one to eat lunch with, and opening it up and flicking through it and laughing, and even on the jokes I didn't get, I would go to the dial-up computers and look them up and make sense of them. But it introduced me to the basic subversion of expectations in comedy, and it's what got me hooked on the idea of making comedy, making people laugh, and all of the first comics and things I ever doodled were sort of based on this style. Thanks to this comic that I did that straight line eye in the old Eddsworld character designs. It's very nice and it's wholesome and it's from the 80s, and even though Gary Larson is a boomer, he seems pretty nice. And his comics aren't about hating his wife. Refreshing. At number 9 is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World from Brian Lee O'Malley. This is the first graphic novel I ever read, and appropriately, it was recommended to me by someone far cooler than me. It's about a 23-year-old Scott Pilgrim trying to date and battling evil exes, and it's just very kooky and cute and cartoony, with a little bit of edge, and it's very millennial. I would say if I had to recommend a comic to an older person to say, this is my kind of lived experience as a millennial straight white man. It's just nice, it's uncomplicated, and the movie was good. And Michael Cera did a good job. It's good movie. It's good movie. At number 8, we have Descender from Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. This is sci-fi with lots of robots and aliens and politics. I feel like it's what the Star Wars prequels kind of wished they were at points, and this comic is genuinely just beautiful to like read and look at. It's illustrated with these wonderful watercolors, and sometimes I can just flick through it and look at it and be happy. It's genuinely one of the only things that I read slowly, because I'll look at the words and then I will peruse the artwork. It's just that nice to look at. And I think at about volume 6 or so, the series transitions into Ascender, which is much more about fantasy with sci-fi in there. And it's a nice read. Robots and Space Wars. Number 7 is I Am a Hero by Kengo Hanazawa. It's about a otaku mangaka named Hiro, get the pun in the name, surviving a zombie apocalypse. And it's very weird. It's very Japanese in sort of its tone and pacing and sensibilities. The character isn't a hero in the traditional sense. They are a coward and kind of a shitty person making their way through a zombie apocalypse, which is just, it's tonally different to the way I think Western comics would handle a zombie apocalypse. And it's nice and different, and there's a lot of it, and it ends very strangely because it's a manga, but damn it, I enjoyed it, alright? Number 6 is Crossed Wish You Were Here. This is the comic on this list that I was the most at ends about putting on, because it's fucked. It's horrible. I felt bad reading this. The Cross series, created by Garth Ennis, follows this premise of what if there were a highly infectious virus that brought out the absolute worst in humanity. And it's not the coronavirus, which has a very similar effect. Everyone devolves into the most base, primal, but excessively evil version of themselves. And like watching a gory movie that's horrible just for the sake of it, it sort of scratches an itch. And this particular spin-off is about a bunch of people on an island in Scotland trying to survive the much worse than a zombie apocalypse. Don't read this if, like, you have any sense of morals or taste, because it's awful, but I liked it. I'm sorry. Number 5 is another manga. This one is Blade of the Immortal by Hiroaki Samura, and it's about Rin, a young girl looking to avenge her brutally murdered parents, and she hires Manji, a samurai who cannot die, who has way too many swords on him. It's just a violent story of vengeance, but it's got lots of complex characters and that weird sort of slow pacing where people are murdering each other but being very civil while doing it. It's a fun read. It also has a pretty faithful anime adaptation that's out at the moment, so if you don't want to read it, you can watch it. And number 4, it's got to be The Punisher, but specifically the Max run by Garth Ennis. A lot of the coolest shit you've seen in the Punisher movies or Netflix show is lifted straight from the pages of this run. And it also doesn't integrate any of the Marvel superheroes, which is mwah, because they just rip that suspension of disbelief away. Nope, it's just a dude who loves killing criminals. And yes, he's pretty fashy, and no, he's not a role model, and also there's some not okay language in this, and it's always justified as it's another character who's a bad guy saying it, but I still wouldn't have used those words, but it's cool nonetheless, so take it with a pinch of salt. And if you just want a man doing pew-pews, this is your thing. For number 3, I wanted to spotlight the horror mangaka Junji Ito kind of as a whole. I couldn't really pick one of his stories to go with. I like Gough because it's a smaller one, and also it features the enigma of Amigara Fault, which is one of his most iconic stories, where people are like crawling into holes that are the same size as them. You've probably seen it on the internet. He's really cool. His stories are strange, and he doesn't stick the landing very often. Like, his stories just kind of end at some point. If you read Uzumaki, you'll notice that it just ends. It just runs out and stops, but he's still really cool, and I appreciate him so much, and I buy everything that gets translated and put out. So Junji Ito, good egg. Not very good at ending a story, but good egg. At number 2, it's gotta be Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. Now, I am someone that hates fantasy with a passion. I don't like elves and orcs and all that stuff. So when I say that I love this sci-fi fantasy series with magic and weird elven kind of stuff, please understand that's a big deal. Like, it took a lot for them to make me like this, and I instantly fell in love with it. It's about space spice. This is a sci-fi fantasy story set in an intergalactic space race war, and that's not a space race war, it's a space race war, and it's about 2 characters that fall in love and have a child, and the craziness that comes about with that. There's lots of swearing and violence and sex, not appropriate for kids. And if you need anything else for me to sell you on it, allow me to read you an excerpt from the first page. Am I shitting? It feels like I'm shitting. What more do you need to know? Before I get to my final and most favoritist graphic novel, though, I want to give an honorable mention and shout out to some of the things that didn't make this list, be they just not quite in my top 10, or I didn't like the way they ended, or I'm just still reading them. They are Eden, It's an Endless World by Hiroki Endo, cyberpunk, beautiful, violent manga, kinda goes a bit off the rails by around volume 8, and they didn't even bother publishing the last 4 volumes, but still cool and pretty. The Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman, obviously a classic, went on to inspire a very popular TV show, but much like the show, eventually I just kind of ran out of steam reading it because it describes itself as the continuing story of survival. It's unending. It never ends. Can these people have a break? Also, they did Andrea real dirty in the show, and she's much cooler in the comic. Jessica Jones by Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Gaydos. Once again, this is a Marvel comic, but like The Punisher, it's not too stooped in superheroes, so it's accessible in a relatively short story, and you don't have to worry that you don't know who these characters are, because this is where she begins, and she's cool and badass. The Rick and Morty comics, pretty much just all of them. I mean, I like Rick and Morty, obviously, just fucking look at me, and the comics are just more Rick and Morty. So if you were left unsatisfied by any of the episodes of the new season, you can just read it and do the voices in your head. It's great. Southern Bastards by Jason Aaron and Jason Latour, just sort of gritty, dirty old mans in the deep south beating up shitty people with a stick. Yep. Harrow County by Cullen Bunn and Tyler Brook. Magic, witches, demons in Depression-era American farmland. A Walk Through Hell by Garth Ennis, once again, and Goran Suzuka. A couple detectives get stuck in hell, and it's a psychological horror, and it's grim. And finally, American Vampire by Scott Snyder, Raphael Albuquerque, and Stephen King. And it's about a new breed of vampire that starts out in the American Old West, and I believe the story is going to continue on to the present day. I'm currently reading this, really enjoying this. I feel like it would be in my top 10 had I finished it, but we'll see where it goes. I don't know. But it's real cool. All right, without further ado, let's get on to my final and favorite graphic novel. And if you've been paying attention, you may have figured out what it already is. It's The Boys by, once again, Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson.
Oh, The Boys! I wasn't expecting that at all.
Now, I really hope Garth Ennis is a good person, otherwise I'm going to not be able to enjoy a lot of my favorite things. If you've been paying attention, you may have noticed that pretty much no superhero comics make it into my list of favorites, and that's because I just don't enjoy them. I can't really get into them. The suspension of disbelief is too difficult because these characters are undying and just regenerate or come back to life. There's no weight to any of it, and it leaves me with so many questions about the world at large in which these superheroes inhabit. That's where this comes in. This is set in a sort of DC Marvel fusion universe where superheroes are just awful bastards just running amok, and they're irresponsible and they're egotistical and they're just corrupt and terrible, and it's violent and sexual and problematic and horrible, and you have this crack team of CIA freelancers that's job is literally just to beat up and kill awful superheroes. Oh, I love it. I mean, like I said, it's violent, it's sexual, it's inappropriate, it's offensive, it's problematic. I wouldn't recommend this to young people. I definitely wouldn't recommend this to impressionable people, but it's kind of my kink, and it's very cool. And they've also got an Amazon Prime show, which is pretty good. I don't know why Carl Urban is trying to do a British accent. Him just doing his Kiwi accent would have been fine. I like The Boys. Gets a bit rambly at points, but scratches that itch. All right, those were my favorite comics. If you want to check out any of the ones I mentioned, I hope you do so with the ones that are appropriate for your age range and sensibilities. I think this is the penultimate of this series. I'm going to do one more TomSka's Top 10 on my top 10 movie moments, and then I'm going to wrap it up for good. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you for the next one. TomSka out. Come.